completely conquered the game of life. And I'm talking about a trillionaire, not a billionaire. That's old news. A trillionaire.
So we're imagining like the absolute apex predator of capitalism here.
Exactly. Someone with a GDP-level bank account. They have perfect health. They own assets on every single continent. They have influence, fame, just a consumption capacity that we can't even really process
Right.
by every single metric of the modern world. Forbes, Wall Street, Instagram. This person is the ultimate winner. They are the exact success story we're all supposedly chasing.
Yeah, that's definitely the picture we're sold.
But today, we're doing a deep dive into a source that looks at that exact same person, that trillionaire, and argues that they might actually be the definition of a total failure.
It's a pretty massive slap in the face to the American dream, honestly.
It's a total inversion. We are unpacking this really fascinating, pretty heavy article titled The Trillionaire Loser. It was written by Mohammed Abdullah and published in the Journal of Islamic Psychology on February 13th. And the title alone hooked me. It feels like an oxymoron. Like, how can you have everything and be a loser?
Well, to understand that, we have to kind of swap out our lenses. Usually when we analyze success, we use economic lenses, ROI, net worth, quarterly growth, things like that.
Right.
This article demands we put on a theological lens, specifically Islamic eschatology, which is the theology of the end times, combined with a bit of psychology.
So we are essentially leaving the boardroom and entering the courtroom of the afterlife.
That is a great way to put it. And the mission of this deep dive is to unpack the author's argument that winning in the material world, so the world of atoms and dollars, can actually be the specific mechanism that causes you to lose in the metaphysical world. And just to be clear for everyone listening, we are impartially unpacking the author's viewpoint here. We're not endorsing a specific theology or, taking a political stance against capitalism. We just want to explore this really unique framework.
Exactly. We're just laying out the ideas. And he doesn't actually start with theology, which I found super interesting. He starts with biology.
He does.
He starts with the hardware.
Right. He opens with what philosophers would call a design argument, but he updates it with modern science.
He throws some staggering numbers at the reader right out of the gate. He breaks down the human body and says, we are made of 34 trillion cells. And if you zoom in further...
7 octillion atoms.
Yeah, 7 octillion.
I actually had to look up what an octillion is. It's a 7 followed by 27 zeros.
Wow.
It is a number so vast our brains literally cannot visualize it.
And he lists the complexity of holding those atoms together. Quantum fields, subatomic particles, gravity, oxygen exchange. He is building this picture of a machine that is so intricate, it's almost terrifying.
And here is his main point with all that. Complexity implies intent.
Right.
He argues that because you consist of 7 octillion atoms organized in such a specific, highly functional way, the idea that you somehow created yourself is laughable.
Okay, but a skeptic listening to this might say, well, that's just evolution, right? Random mutations over billions of years.
And the author anticipates that exact pushback. He argues that random evolution alone is statistically insufficient to account for that specific level of order and consciousness. So for him, this biological complexity is the first hard proof of a creator, of Allah.
So he's establishing a baseline right there. You are a created being.
Correct. And that is the first domino to fall in his argument.
Yeah.
Because if you are created, you don't own yourself.
You are property,
Yeah.
which is a really triggering concept for modern people. We're so used to saying, I am my own person. I am a captain of my soul.
But the author says, no, you are not. You are a vessel on loan. And this leads to his big distinction between the earthly body and the real you. He argues the body, the thing with the cells and the atoms, is just the rental car. The driver is the rue, the soul.
No, this part got a little controversial in the text. To prove the soul exists, he points to a medical phenomenon. He calls it sudden, healthy heart attack death syndrome.
Yeah, he leans heavily on this. He points out cases where someone is biologically perfect, no clogged arteries, no congenital defects, physically in their absolute prime, and then snap, they're just gone.
It sounds almost like a glitch in the matrix. Or, just something medical science hasn't quite figured out yet.
But the author argues it's not a glitch, it is an extraction. He says this proves that the life force isn't just a chemical reaction that runs until the fuel runs out. It's something that actively enters and leaves.
Right.
And because it's non-physical, you cannot find it with an MRI.
So if we accept his premise for a second, that the body is a temporary rental and the soul is the eternal driver, that completely changes the investment strategy, doesn't it?
It entirely flips it. If the body's going to decompose and the soul is going to continue, then investing 100% of your effort into the body.
Or the body's comfort or its bank account.
Exactly. That becomes a catastrophic allocation of resources.
It's like spending $1 million upgrading a hotel room you're only staying in for one night.
And ignoring the house you're going to live in forever. The author presents a binary outcome here. There is no middle ground, no participation trophy in the afterlife. It is either paradise, Jannah, or hellfire.
I was struck by how he described Jannah. We often hear these generic descriptions, but he calls it perfection.
He frames it as the ultimate fulfillment of human desire. Perfect weather, perfect health, permanent status. He explicitly says 1 second of that is worth more than trillions of dollars.
But then there's the alternative, hellfire. He describes it as a never-ending disappointment.
That phrase really chilled me, never-ending disappointment.
Yeah.
Because we usually think of fire and physical torture, which he does mention, but disappointment speaks to the psychology of it. It's the realization of total irreversible loss.
Like realizing you had the winning lottery ticket in your pocket your whole life and you just threw it in the trash.
Exactly. Which brings us to the core term of the whole article, the title itself. The loser.
Right. In Arabic, the term he uses is al-khasirun.
Now, if I call someone a loser in our modern context, I usually mean they're broke or they have no ambition, no friends. It's a social slur.
For sure. Our definition of loss is entirely social or financial.
But the author explains that in the Quranic framework, loss, or khusran, is existential. It's not about losing your wallet, it's about losing your essence.
The author uses Surah al-Asr to break this down, and this was actually a bit of a shock to me. The text asserts that the default state of humanity isn't neutral.
Right.
It's loss.
That is such a crucial distinction. We tend to think we start life at 0 and try to score points to win.
Yeah, exactly.
The text argues, no, you are born bleeding equity. You are already on a sinking ship. The quote is, mankind is in loss.
So unless you are actively bailing water, you're going to drown.
Precisely. You are losing time every single second. And the author lists the only 4 things that stop the bleeding.
Faith, which is righteous action, commitment to truth, and commitment to patience.
If you lack those 4, it doesn't matter if you are the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. It doesn't even matter if you cured a disease, arguably, if it wasn't anchored in that metaphysical reality.
Wow.
You are, by definition, in a state of loss because you're spending your limited time capital on things that have 0 exchange rate in the afterlife.
And that leads us to the psychological twist that I found honestly the most disturbing part of the piece. The author brings up Surah al-Kahf to describe the greatest losers.
This is where the article shifts from theology into psychology. Who are the greatest losers?
You'd expect him to say mass murderers or tyrants or people who actively fight against religion.
But he doesn't. He says the greatest losers are the people who think they're doing good.
That is terrifying.
It is the tragedy of delusional righteousness. The text describes people whose efforts are lost in worldly life, meaning they worked hard, they built companies, they organized charities, they were, quote-unquote, productive citizens.
But they were epistemically disconnected from the truth.
Yes.
The text calls this epistemic failure, mistaking falsehood for truth.
Imagine running a marathon. You train for years, you sweat, you push yourself, you cross the finish line in record time, you feel amazing, and then the officials tap you on the shoulder and tell you, you ran the wrong way.
You're disqualified.
Worse, you're lost. That is the greatest loser. The tragedy isn't that they didn't try, it's that they were fully convinced their wrong was right. It's a massive warning against arrogance, thinking you can define good on your own terms without consulting the Creator's manual.
It really reminds me of the modern obsession with the phrase, my truth. The text seems to be arguing there is no my truth, there is only the truth.
Exactly. And the author uses very economic language to describe this relationship with truth. He calls it the economics of existence.
Yeah, I noticed that too. He references Surah al-Baqarah saying people purchase misguidance in exchange for guidance.
It's a really powerful metaphor. Imagine you are born with a massive trust fund. That capital is your innate fitra, your natural inclination toward God, and the revelation sent down. You have this capital.
Okay.
The loser is someone who takes that massive capital and trades it for misguidance.
So they basically trade a diamond for a piece of glass.
And they think they got a great deal because the glass is shiny. The text explicitly says their commerce has brought no profit.
But the loss goes even deeper than just a bad trade. From Surah Az-Zumar, the text talks about losing yourself.
This is the relational continuity concept. In the secular view, if you screw up your life, You might die alone or die poor. But in this worldview, ultimate loss is defined as losing your own soul and being completely separated from your family on the day of resurrection.
So if you're a winner on Earth, you're the trillionaire, you have all the power, but you're disconnected from truth, you end up eternally isolated.
You're alienated from the source of life, and you're alienated from your people. It is a state of absolute relational bankruptcy.
The author provides this comparison table that I found really helpful to visualize all this. It contrasts the worldly view directly with the Quranic view.
It highlights the total inversion of values we were talking about earlier. In the worldly view, who is the winner? The tyrant, the billionaire, the celebrity.
Because they have resources, they have consumption capacity.
But in the Quranic view, that exact same person is ruined if they lack faith. Conversely, look at the hidden believer.
The guy working the night shift, driving an Uber, maybe barely making rent each month.
To the market, he's a nobody. He's just a statistic. But the text argues that if he has those four qualities, faith, action, truth, patience, he is the trillionaire of the next life. He is eternally successful.
It completely demonetizes our status hierarchies.
It really does. And this leads us naturally to the author's critique of the system we actually live in, capitalism. Because if the metrics of success are this radically different, then the water we're swimming in is fundamentally poisonous.
Let's unpack that a bit. The text outlines the capitalist metric of success: wealth accumulation, asset ownership, market dominance.
And consumption capacity, that's the big one today. Your value is increasingly signaled just by what you can buy.
And in this system, time is entirely monetized. Time is money. We've all heard it a million times. If you aren't being productive, you are wasting value.
But the author contrasts this with the Quranic metric, which is al-falo.
Al-falo. It roughly translates to success, but it feels different than success does in English.
Because success in English usually implies an ending. You reach the mountaintop, you won. Al-falo comes from the root word for farmer or cultivator. It implies ongoing growth, moral discipline, actively tilling the soil of the soul.
So it's not about what you have, it's about what you grow.
Precisely. And the text brings up at-takathur to explain the trap we fall into. The verse says, competition for increase distracts you until you visit the graves.
Competition for increase. I feel like that is the most concise definition of the rat race I have ever heard.
It really is. We are programmed to just want more. More followers, more money, a bigger house, a faster car. The text says this drive for increase is fundamentally a distraction.
A distraction from what, though?
From the real purpose, from the final audit.
But I want to pause here for a second because I feel like we need to clarify something. The text isn't actually saying money is evil, right?
No, and that is a vital nuance to catch. The author points out that the Prophet Muhammad was a merchant. Many of his close companions were very wealthy traders. Islam is not an anti-market religion.
So what's the difference between a wealthy companion of the Prophet and the trillionaire loser?
Identity. The problem isn't the wealth itself. The problem is obsessive accumulation as an identity. When your net worth becomes your self-worth, when wealth becomes your core moral reference point.
So if you have money in your hand, it's fine. But if you have money in your heart, it's poison.
That is exactly the distinction. If you are competing just to have more than your neighbor, you are caught in the trap of at-takathur. You are distracted.
Yeah.
And the text warns that distraction lasts until you visit the graves.
That's such a sobering image. You're just running on this treadmill, checking your stock portfolio, stressing out about your quarterly review, and then boom, you're in the grave. The distraction is over. Reality sets in.
And that brings us back to the concept of time. We touched on it earlier, but the distinction here is profound. In capitalism, time is an asset to be exploited. In the text, time is a witness.
A witness.
Yes, time is moralized. It's not just an empty container for activity. The hours you spend are actively recording you. If you spend an hour making $1 million, but you did it through fraud or while entirely neglecting your soul, that hour testifies against you. It counts as a loss.
So a billionaire who spent 60 years building an empire but ignored God has essentially just wasted 60 years of time capital.
According to this framework, yes. They are completely bankrupt in the only currency that the central bank of the afterlife accepts.
The author also diagnoses the psychological toll of living in this competition for increase. He talks about the hedonic treadmill.
We have all felt this. You want the new phone. You buy the new phone, you feel great for a week, then it's just a phone.
Yeah.
And you want the next one. You return to your baseline level of happiness, but now you need a bigger fix just to feel good again.
And chronic comparison.
Always looking sideways. Horizontal competition. Keeping up with the Joneses creates anxiety, envy, and just a constant fear of decline. The text argues this is the recipe for a miserable life,
Yeah.
even if you are incredibly rich.
So what's the cure? If the disease is competition for increase, what is the antidote he suggests?
The article prescribes two things, qana'a and shukr.
Kana means contentment.
Yes, but not settling. We often think contentment means you just gave up on your goals. In this context, it means being satisfied with what is sufficient. It is an active, conscious choice to step off the treadmill. And shukr is gratitude.
In a culture that constantly screams more, 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 contentment is basically an act of rebellion.
It's a radical act. It is declaring independence from the market. It's finally saying, I have enough.
The author frames this as shifting from horizontal competition to vertical accountability. I really loved that visualization.
It's the key takeaway for me, honestly. Horizontal competition is looking left and right, constantly checking your status against your peers. Does he have a better car? Did she get a promotion? It is exhausting. Vertical accountability is looking up.
Ignoring the peers and focusing purely on the creator.
Exactly. It asks, am I fulfilling my purpose? Not, am I richer than Dave? It liberates you. You aren't running the same race as everyone else anymore.
So let's bring this all home. We've looked at the biology, the 7 octillion atoms that suggest a designer. We've looked at the definition of the loser, the one who trades guidance for misguidance. And we've looked at the critique of capitalism, the sheer distraction of accumulation.
The text forces a final synthesis. It's a fundamental clash of worldviews. Capitalism says, maximize profit. The Quran says, maximize eternal alignment.
Capitalism measures quarterly returns.
And the Quran measures the ultimate return.
And the bottom line of this whole piece is, a person may die a trillionaire and be a total loser.
And a person may die completely unknown and be the ultimate winner.
It really forces you to redefine your ambition. If you accept this worldview, your 5-year plan looks very, very different.
It does. It changes how you view your bank account, your job title, even your free time. It asks you to audit your life not by your net worth, but by your soul worth, if you will.
And the author finishes with a very direct call to action. He is not subtle about it at all.
No, he's not writing a detached philosophy paper. He is writing a lifeboat manual. He explicitly invites the reader to choose to become a Sunni Muslim today. He believes this is the only way to escape that never-ending disappointment. He's proselytizing, yes, but he sees it as pulling people out of a burning building.
It's a heavy perspective. It deeply challenges the hustle culture narrative we're all swimming in.
It asks the fundamental question, hustle for what? If the destination is the grave, and the grave is just the waiting room for the final audit, then is your hustle helping you pass the audit? Or is it just distracting you from studying for it?
That is the question. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought experiment derived right from this text's logic. It's a bit of a mind bender.
Let's hear it.
Imagine for a second that the author is right. Just entertain the premise. Imagine that right now, this exact second, your heart stops. The sudden death syndrome we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Every single dollar in your bank account stays here. Your job title stays here. Your house, your car, your followers, poof, completely detached from you. The absolute only currency you are allowed to take with you is your intentions, why you did what you did, and the actual state of your soul.
That is a terrifying audit.
If that happened right now, how rich would you actually be? Would you be a trillionaire? Or would you be bankrupt?
That is the ultimate question.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive today. We'll see you next time.